Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network. And joining me to talk about Game 2 of the Rockets Golden State series is our colleague on Bleav, Sam Orlik, who hosts the SportsEthos Golden State Warriors podcast. Great to have you on the show, and always fun to get the opponent perspective, Sam.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Thanks for having me. Always fun to have some colorful dialogue here and talking about the NBA and the playoffs for sure.
Absolutely. And just a quick aside for my YouTube viewers, because of some tech issues, it'll be just audio for Sam. You guys are still stuck with my mug for this one, unfortunately. And as we're recording this Thursday night, still no update on Jimmy Butler's health. So Sam, I want to just get your overall reaction from what you've seen from the Warriors, maybe starting with what you saw pre-Butler injury. What's your impression so far of this series?
Yeah, with Jimmy Butler on the Warriors, we saw in Game 1 that the Warriors were able to execute pretty effectively on both ends of the floor. It really kind of came down to managing turnovers. Their defense really kind of bottled up Jalen Green, who I think is the big X factor for the Rockets in this series. And so, with a healthy Jimmy Butler, I think that bodes well for the Warriors throughout the rest of the series.
Did you feel confident in what Golden State had pre-Butler injury, or, early in the game, it looked like the Rockets had taken control, of course, and they had a pretty good lead when Butler did go out of the game. How did you feel in general and how the series was looking at that point?
Yeah, I thought giving Houston a lot of credit, they came out with a lot of energy in Game 2, a little bit more desperate and hungry. I felt like the Warriors didn't really execute as you would have expected. So, yeah, it seemed like it was going to be a little bit more of an uphill battle. But the Warriors, their depth, their veterans, they're incredibly poised. They've been here before. It felt like to me in that early stage of the game, yeah, it definitely wasn't ideal in terms of, you said the Rockets built the lead, even with Butler there. In watching that pre-injury, it still felt like, hey, they're going to turn this around, start hitting some shots, kind of settle in, force some turnovers, get back into it. So I'd still feel like as long as the Warriors can bottle up Jalen Green, I think that they have a pretty good shot at winning the series.
Yeah, we're going to get more into Jalen in a bit, but just your perspective on the play where Butler got hurt. What did you think about it? I know some Warriors fans might have thought it wasn't so much an accident. What did you think?
It's kind of a bang-bang play, honestly. It seemed like Amen Thompson had some kind of momentum out of his control. Maybe he was kind of tripped up by Draymond Green, just bodies kind of colliding. You hate to see that type of contact, though, where one guy's airborne and can't really protect themselves. Obviously, a controversial play when a star player gets hurt. I know some Warriors fans are kind of looking at some plays that Amen's had in the past, but it didn't really feel like as blatant as maybe some other things that we saw in the series that didn't really result in that type of injury, but we'll get into that later. So I didn't really feel like that was something that Amen Thompson was really intentionally trying to do, take out Jimmy Butler on that play.
Yeah, I'm just curious what plays from the past that Amen Thompson's had. I mean, he was in a fight with Tyler Hero, but had nothing to do with the cheap shot. They just got into a fight earlier this year. What is Amen's long history in his 2 years in the league?
Not long history. No, I think there was just one other play that he got ejected for. I don't have the full details off the top of my head. I just remember seeing something from it. So there, obviously in a heated playoff series, very physical series, fans get pretty supercharged, and will go to whatever depths to try and kind of cast characters in whatever light. I'm sure Rockets fans feel strongly about Draymond Green. Yeah, I think again, my point is that I didn't feel like Amen was intentionally trying to take out Butler. It just kind of felt like a bang bang play. Just unfortunate that it happened. Is all.
Do the Warriors have answers without Butler? Say he's not close to 100%, or he misses a couple of games here. Is there any answers that they do have?
With the Warriors without Jimmy Butler, we're a pretty average team in the regular season, and that was with Andrew Wiggins. So obviously, huge hole to fill. Jonathan Kuminga's name obviously comes up. He did not have a great game when his number was called. I felt like in game 2, a lot can change. But the Warriors did have regular season success beating the Rockets without Jimmy Butler. So I think it's certainly going to be exponentially more difficult. But I think when you've got Steph Curry on your team, you really can't ever say that they're completely out of it. Probably take, a Herculean effort from the others, whether that's Pods, Healed, Moody, Post, all kind of stepping up. All those guys have got to knock down shots, and you need heroics from Steph Curry. So certainly would swing the series in favor of the Rockets, I would say, compared to heading in. I think it definitely swings in favor of the Rockets, but I do think it's doable. Maybe just not quite as doable as we saw in game 1.
Are you a Jonathan Kuminga fan? Because I know he's somebody that sort of splits the fan base a little bit, potentially, or at least nationally. I know there's a lot of differing opinions on him.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that Jonathan Kuminga is a player. Yeah, sure. I think he's got incredible upside, very athletic. I think he's kind of barely scratched the surface of the player he could be. But Jonathan Kuminga on the Warriors with Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Steve Kerr trying to cash in the last couple rings while they still have, doesn't really line up, unfortunately. And I think that's what they've been trying to do, and really kind of getting Jimmy Butler solidified, him kind of being on the outside looking in. Now, if he accepted kind of being a little bit more of an ancillary player, he could still have an impact. But I mean, this is a guy that's looking to get his big payday. He wants to be a featured player. He's obviously struggled. It's been frustrating for him. He's been yanked around by the Warriors in and out of the rotation for the last 4 years. So I kind of have to put those two things in separate buckets here. Like, I like Jonathan Kuminga, but he's not quite the complementary player that really fits alongside a team that's trying to win a championship with veterans like Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler. More so Jimmy Butler, who's got the ball in his hands a lot, trying to set up Steph Curry.
What do you think Steve Kerr doesn't particularly like about Kuminga, or why, he was out of the rotation basically until this last game?
His inability to be more of a role player in terms of doing the little things, starting with like defense and rebounding, being super solid at just that, and then kind of building on that, finishing plays offensively and having recognition. So we saw a lot of this with Moses Moody also, where Moody couldn't really crack the rotation because every time he got the ball, he took a shot, and he was a ball stopper. And so if you're playing next to Steph Curry and you're going to hold on to the ball, there's not a lot of minutes for you to get. Kuminga's a little bit more of a play finisher than Moody was, but Moody's really kind of transformed his game into being like a defense first guy, kind of like the 3-and-D guy that we envisioned him to be. A lot of that's because he's walked into the starting role with the departure of Andrew Wiggins. But for Jonathan Kuminga, it's been a struggle to see him defend and rebound consistently and then be more of a connector on offense. And so we saw him come into game 2 immediately looking for his own shot. Didn't seem like he had any recognition about how the Rockets had been playing defense the entire series. It's like first play, he gets the ball, drives right into contact, kind of flails up a bad shot, and looks around at the refs for a foul. And it's like, really, dude, you've been sitting on the bench, and that's what you thought you were going to get that call? And so it's frustrating because he has the tools to be this incredible defender, rebounder. He's got length, he's got athleticism, but it seems like he's trying to be like the full package max player, and the Warriors are just kind of been pleading with him to be like a Sean Marion and then just kind of build on his game. Even in earlier, before Jimmy Butler in the regular season, when he kind of became into that featured role, even when he was coming off the bench, playing like 30 minutes, but having a substantial impact, Steve Kerr had to like really intentionally build all the guys around him to have to be shooters. And Steph Curry was kind of like setting him up to be able to finish all these plays. That's just not winning playoff basketball at this point in the season. That was kind of seeing like, hey, we're an average team. We need Kuminga to score to put up points. Curry can only do so much, so this is okay. And now you get a guy like Jimmy Butler, and it's like the team's dynamic changed, the direction's changed. So a lot of this isn't just Steve Kerr. I think people kind of say Steve Kerr's doing this. I mean, Steph Curry's on board with this too. These guys are in lockstep. Like they're trying to figure this thing out together. That's why Guy Santos plays over Kuminga, because Santos is going to space out, knock down threes, hustle after loose balls, and make the right pass. He's not worried about how many shots he gets up. He's not worried about any of that other stuff. He's just going to play hard, and you can rely on him and count on him to do that. Even if he's going to pick up like 4 fouls in 5 minutes, you know, he's going to play hard and rebound and take the open three. With Kuminga, he hasn't really shown that he can do anything consistently, really, even if he has this incredible upside. So it's hard. You feel for the kid. He's, 22 years old. He has all this potential, but it feels like, I don't know if he's got the wrong people around him whispering in his ear, or if it's his own thing. It's really hard for young players, especially lottery picks, to be on like a winning team like the Warriors and win a championship and go through that and not really get their opportunity to get yanked around. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's got ties to Jalen Green from their days with the G League Ignite. Both guys were there at the same time in the draft, obviously the same time. We're going to hit Jalen in a second and, his big game. But before we roll on, just a quick reminder that the NBA playoffs are actually your chance to score big for all our listeners out there, whether you're riding with the Rockets or cheering your favorite underdog. Every three-pointer and buzzer beater, great opportunity to win at MyBookie. Place your bets live as the action unfolds. If you're feeling confident, lock in your winnings early with our quick cash out option. Never miss a chance to turn your basketball insights into real cash. And hey, are you new to MyBookie? Well, sign up today with the promo code MM50, our exclusive promo code MM50, and instantly boost your first deposit if you deposit $50. MyBookie tosses in an extra $25 with that $50. Deposit $100, get a $50 bonus. More action, more excitement, more chances to win during basketball's most intense playoff season. Plus, when the games wrap up, keep the winning streak alive at MyBookie's casino with slots, blackjack, roulette, and more. The thrills never stop. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. All right, Sam, Jalen Green had a few jitters in his first playoff game, but broke out in game 2. Steph was 7 of 20 in his first playoff game. If people don't remember that far back, but I decided to take a look. He did score 30 in his second game. So he was back to being Steph the same way we saw with Jalen. He was 2 years older, actually, than Jalen is right now in his first taste of postseason play. So I guess I'm asking Sam, do you recall the early playoff days of Steph, and what's your Warriors perspective as you watch Jalen go through all this?
You got to have good veterans on your team to help you through that. And for the Warriors, it was like Andrew Bogut. They didn't have Andre Iguodala in that first playoff series. They actually played the Denver Nuggets. Jarrett Jack, just these guys that help you kind of coach you through that process. You obviously, it's one thing as a player to go through the regular season and kind of rise through it, but it's a gauntlet in the playoffs. It is really a different game. The lights are brighter, the officiating's different, the pace slows down, everything kind of changes. So it's definitely kind of a coming of age moment, and different players handle it differently, and for us fans and media and everything, it kind of puts a lot on your legacy, depending on if you kind of rise to the occasion or not. A lot of players get good or bad rep, based off, he's just a regular season guy, or, this guy rises to the occasion in the playoffs, and not everyone can do that. It takes a lot of mental fortitude. Some of that you can just have or not, and some of that you can work on.
What do you think Golden State can do differently in guarding Jalen this next game? What was different besides him just hitting shots in the second game? Anything that you saw, or do they have to hope Jalen goes cold again?
I thought Jalen had better decision making. In game one, he kind of got himself into trouble dribbling into tougher shots. But I also think it was personnel a little bit on the Warriors side. Pod started, but only played like 8 minutes. Wasn't himself, trying to deal with food poisoning. Warriors just felt like they got out a little lackadaisical in terms of, I felt like there was an over correction on attention on Şengün, who was dominant in game one. And so I felt like Şengün just had a lot of really nice passes that led to layups. And so the Warriors were feeling like they're giving up points in the paint. They weren't able to kind of help as much. And Jalen Green hit shots, right? At the end of the day, it's kind of a make or miss league, and his threes looked really good. That kind of opened up the floor for him. But I think first and foremost is kind of like decision making and shot diet, that you're kind of taking the right shots, reading the defense. There was not a lot of Moses Moody or GP2 or pods in game two, so I think that definitely helped as well. Just the defenders that he was playing against. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares coming back to San Francisco. The Warriors in the regular season had done a pretty good job bottling him up. Again, I think they've just kind of recognized, like, hey, this is the one guy that's a bucket. Like, a lot of guys who can make shots, right? Dylan Brooks could score 20 or score 5. Same thing with Fred VanVleet. These guys can be volume shooters that sometimes have a good night and sometimes don't. But you let Jalen Green get going, and it's hard to stop the Rockets, especially if they get out in transition and get easy buckets.
A huge story here is Fred VanVleet. Rockets fans would like less of VanVleet. Udoka can't get enough of him. They have sort of a little love affair. He played 40 minutes in game one, 42 minutes in game two after having the horrible game one, which is a little funny. But the key was he only took 8 shots, and they were plus 19 in the minutes that he played. And Sammy also did a pretty good job of defending Steph Curry. What are you seeing from VanVleet, and how do you think the Rockets have defended Curry, and what part are you seeing from VanVleet in that whole scenario?
VanVleet's just a smart guy. I could understand, a guy's going to be a volume shooter and only make 2 or 3 field goals. It's kind of tough to see that. But one example I'll give was Kuminga was defending VanVleet, and Kuminga's like all up in him. VanVleet takes him off the dribble, feels Kuminga on his hip, and draws a foul. Just like a very simple play, but it's plays like that win you games, where you just recognize as the offense where the defender is, get them out of position, and how do you set against them. Those are valuable winning basketball plays. In terms of defensively and stopping Steph Curry, VanVleet's got a lot of experience back from his days with the Toronto Raptors. So he's able to be physical, get in his space, not necessarily getting overly aggressive or handsy, kind of have that fine balance between where you can kind of hold a guy a little bit and it's not going to get called, and being able to navigate screens and chase him around the floor. So, I give the Rockets a lot of credit. I think Steph Curry and Draymond Green combined for 11 turnovers in game two. And yes, the Warriors lost Jimmy Butler early in that one and they didn't have pods, but that to me was the difference in games 1 and 2, the turnover battle. And so for the Warriors, some of these turnovers were just atrocious, just throwing the ball away. And those are just easy scores for the Rockets on the other end. So I think that's going to be a really big theme throughout this series for Steph Curry. He was probably feeling a little bit like he needed to carry the load without Jimmy Butler. So trying to do a little bit too much, trying to split double or triple teams, or just trying to get a little fancy with it, turning it over. Obviously, the Warriors like to have the ball in Jimmy Butler's hands to set up Curry, so it changed things a little bit. You saw Draymond Green with the ball more. That was turnovers as well. Yeah, I think that the Warriors got a little bit rattled, even though they're the more veteran team in this one. The emotions were high. There was obviously some contested plays on both ends of the floor, some technicals, some words exchanged throughout the game. But it definitely didn't feel like the Warriors were poised as they should have been, as you'd expect them to be as the older team. So I think Curry's going to bounce back. I mean, he's seen this before throughout his whole career. This isn't, the Rockets aren't the first team to, do everything they can to try and double, triple, take the ball out of his hands, hold him, grab him, do whatever you can to be physical. So sometimes you just have games like this.
How do the Rockets compare defensively from what you've seen and how they've played the Warriors this year to other teams? Are the Rockets playing the Warriors as good as any team that you've seen this year, or is there somebody else that you go, oh boy, they were impossible? I don't know. Oklahoma City would be the team I would assume would be in that conversation.
I think the Rockets probably more so than Oklahoma, just because you've got 3-4 guys that can do it, whether it's Dylan Brooks, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Fred VanVleet. I think just the sheer number of guys that you can throw at him gives you an edge on other teams. Like, OKC has Caruso and Udort and some other guys, but it definitely felt like Curry was able to get loose a little bit more against OKC. Different teams, though, so different adjustments and specifics within those types of matchups. But yeah, I think Houston's done as good of a job as any other team's done, if not better, in terms of trying to bottle up Steph this season.
Udoka coached in the finals against the Warriors and Kerr just 2 years ago. He took a little heat for his offense in that series. He's taken some fan criticism for his offense in Houston. What are your thoughts on Udoka's coaching? I'm sure you watched the series a couple of years ago and, were dissecting it as everybody else was.
Yeah, it's hard. I think there's some similarities there with what the Warriors went through in trying to transform the franchise. Not that this was an issue in his days with Boston, but like the Warriors with Mark Jackson, right? Like the Warriors did not play defense. They were kind of a joke of a team, and Mark Jackson came in and changed the culture. And then you go out and get some veteran guys to help change the locker room and really reinforce that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right coach to like take that team to the next level to be like a playoff team or make a deep playoff run or be a contender, but you need to change the culture first. And so I feel like Ime is a great guy to bring in and really kind of set the tone. This is how we're going to do things, hold guys accountable in places where maybe they weren't for a long time. That being said, yeah, like X's and O's wise, obviously, Warriors had that big win against the Celtics in 22. I think that for the Rockets, I'll be interested to see what additional adjustments can be made if Jalen Green doesn't have it going, if Fred VanVleet isn't hitting shots, because it does feel like it is a little bit one-dimensional. You've got Şengün doing his thing, but then there are times where it seems like he's going to lean more to Adams for defense, or Şengün and Adams on the floor at the same time. But it doesn't necessarily feel like there's a lot of offensive ingenuity or just a lot of like really well executed plays. It's just kind of like play really hard. You guys are swarming on the boards. You make it really hard. You're getting 2, 3, 4 shot attempts. Eventually one of them's going to go in. And then defensively, just playing physical the whole game, just making it really hard on the officials to not call fouls on every single play. I mean, I think there was a little soundbite from game 2 where they caught Ime basically saying, "Keep fouling the Warriors, the refs aren't going to call it." And I mean, that's playoff basketball at the end of the day. I mean, you're going to play hard. The Warriors will obviously embrace that physicality as well. I'm sure Rockets fans feels like there's missed calls. I'm sure Warriors fans feel like there's missed calls. That's usually how contested playoff series go. Both fan bases feel slighted. But, let's say Jimmy Butler does play and he's healthy and everyone's healthy on the Warriors, and the Warriors go on to win the next 4 games or 3 games and take the series. I think maybe there'll be some discussions for the front office to be like, hey, is this the guy that we want to keep going forward? I mean, that seems to be the trend around the league in the West. If it's kind of like a go big or go home type of league. And I don't know where the Rockets are feeling like if they're feeling that pressure, but we just saw Memphis, Denver fire their coaches over, some disappointment. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting.
No, I think Udoka, the confidence is sky high amongst everybody here. I just feel like he's got some weaknesses potentially offensively, and the fan base, I would say, would love for him to add maybe somebody on his staff that's a little bit more offensive minded. On VanVleet, It's if he's not shooting as much, it's really a benefit. I mean, I don't see him getting up a ton of shots being a good thing for the Rockets. Typically, that's the way it's worked out this year, Sam. So I would say, as far as Fred goes throughout the rest of the series, if he's putting up a lot of shots, it means somebody else is really struggling, and it's not a good thing. And also with VanVleet, he's banged up. He's got a knee issue that he's had for the last few weeks, and they've admitted it. We talked a little bit about it on the show, but it's a thing, and I think it's affecting his shot somewhat. I mean, that one particular shot where he was wide open and it was an air ball on a three, you just don't see that, Sam. You don't see that from Fred. His shooting has not been nearly as good this year, but he's not somebody that misses that bad typically.
He was brought in on a 2-year deal. Remind me, is he a free agent this summer?
He's got an option, which is a 3rd-year option, so it's 40 some odd million. I'm trying to remember. It's low 40s. The thought, from some people would be, if they do decide to pursue Durant, he would be the salary that they would send out in that deal. I've said I don't know what Phoenix does with, because they have no interest in rebuilding. They would have to find a 3rd team, and then would you be able to find a 3rd team that would take that 40-something million? Typically, you would send out maybe draft picks, if you're getting another team to take that contract, but Phoenix doesn't have draft picks to send out. So it'd be the Rockets maybe, having to send those draft picks out. And I don't know how many draft picks the Rockets want to send out between what they'd have to give up for Kevin Durant, who's maybe got a year or 2 left, and, what you'd have to give also to get somebody else to take the VanVleet contract. That's my thinking on that whole thing.
Yeah, interesting.
Just a reminder for all our listeners, by the way, I want to hear your Rockets takes. Let me know in the YouTube comments. And for you Texans fans, I'll have draft content in the next week. Keep an eye out for that. You can support us and get updates on every show that drops by subscribing on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up and listen while you're out and about with your favorite podcast app. All right, Sam, is there a healthy respect by Golden State followers for the James Harden Rockets teams that pushed the Warriors a few years ago? How were they regarded out there?
I think in the moment, no, but I think when you can reflect back on it now, for sure. Yeah, you respect that matchup. These two teams went back and forth. The Rockets basically retooled their team however many times to simply try and counter the Warriors. And those were some really good series. That Chris Paul Rockets team felt like they nearly had the edge to beat the Warriors. So James Harden has kind of bounced around a little bit. It's great to see him have some success with the Clippers. I think obviously it was hard to cheer for him on the Rockets or look at his game with respect in the moment. But I think now looking back and reflecting on it, yeah, for sure, those were some hard fought series. And you tip your hat to the battles that these two franchises went up against for multiple years.
The fan base, you feel like they're, they look at those teams as maybe the best of the group that, faced Golden State during that time, at least in the Western Conference. I mean, there was the one, obviously, where Cleveland won with LeBron, but beyond that, I don't know if there was a team that, pushed them to the limit as much as the Rockets did.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
Also, I wanted to ask you before we close out, like what do you fear, when you're watching the Rockets outside of, Jalen Green going off? Is there any other particular player that you're concerned about? And also, who is the guy with Golden State that you would like to see step up a little bit, outside of Steph and Jimmy?
I think the guy that I fear is Dylan Brooks and what he does. Not necessarily in terms of like, is he going to make a bunch of shots, but what's he going to do on the floor? There's that play where he shoots a 3 and gets called for an offensive foul, and you see him wrap up Curry's legs and takes him down with him after shooting the 3. So, and then obviously there's history with him hitting GP2 in the head when he was with Memphis. He took him out. So obviously I think there's a little bit of concern to what level it'll escalate with that. But I think, I'm interested to see Şengün, what he can continue to do in this series. Again, you looked really good in both games. This is kind of his first big moment in the playoffs. So I think, him continuing to be a force. Does he keep knocking down threes? He hit a couple in game 2 after he, had been shooting pretty poorly from 3 for the season. That can obviously be a big factor. And then for the Warriors, getting a healthy Brandon back without dealing with the stomach flu, I think he's a guy that can be a big X factor for the Warriors. He had really been coming on late after having, a terrible start to the season shooting wise. I mean, this is a guy that can hit 4, 5, 6 threes, get to the rim. He's got a nice decel move. He's a good defender, good rebounder, just really tough player on both sides of the floor. So he's a guy that could give the Warriors a big lift. Let's say if Jimmy Butler isn't available, you feel comfortable going to him to put up a lot of shots. He's got a really high IQ, whereas other guys on the floor, I think, are going to be a little bit more situational, a little bit more limited minutes, whether that's Moody or GP2 or even Buddy Hield. Like, sure, Hield could hit 5 threes. He's probably not going to play enough minutes to get that many threes up. You just kind of throw him out there for a little bit. Pods, and then also Quentin Post. I think Post could have a big impact for the Warriors. He hit 4 threes in game 2. A guy that is just, 7-footer that's a legit, probably the second best shooter on the team after Steph Curry, honestly, even as a rookie. His shot looks so good. So those 2 guys, I think, could really help the Warriors here if they could get going and have big games. And Steve Kerr would probably lean on them heavily to help them down the stretch of the series.
What was your prediction going into this series? And if Jimmy Butler is healthy going forward, you sticking with what you had?
So my hot take before this series started was if the Warriors take care of the ball, it was going to be a sweep. And that isn't any disrespect to the Rockets. I just felt like the Warriors, if they play to their potential, they could go all the way with Curry, Butler, Draymond. Play two-way team, number 1 defense in the league since they traded for Butler. Everything that he brings, the confidence that they're playing with, just didn't feel like any. It felt like them and OKC in the Western Conference Finals. We'll see what happens, but it felt like they were Western Conference Finals bound. Now I think it's really up in the air. We'll see if this team's got Jimmy Butler or not. But I think it's going to be a really big game 3. For the Warriors, they won one on the road. That's really what you want to do as a road team. And now it'll be up to the Rockets to see if they can steal one on the road. And then it's a series.
Good stuff. He's SD Orlik on X. That's SD Orlik. Please tell everybody about your show and just anything else you'd like to plug.
Yeah, first of all, appreciate you reaching out and having me on. I always think it's fun, like you mentioned at the beginning, to bring in the opposition, have a little bit more controversial dialogue than just having people that are going to be like, yeah, we're the best and everything's great and everyone else sucks. So that's really awesome. I've been covering the Warriors. This is my 3rd year now doing this over at SportsEthos. You can find me on X. Love to talk NBA, avid fantasy basketball player. Been covering the Warriors and watching them for a couple decades now. It's really kind of been an incredible run for the team, and hoping that they've got a little bit more left in the tank here in these kind of final Steph Curry years.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate you taking the time and a busy time for both of us.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.